Right, I'm going to present the classical tragic hero. And the first thing you have to do is you have to change your concept of what a tragedy is and what a hero is, because the two words together combine to create a single identity, a single concept that might be different than those two individual ideas. First, a tragedy. When you think of a tragedy, you typically think of something that comes out of nowhere, something random. A person finds out they have an inoperable tumor, or what happened to the Bills player, Damar Hamlin. All of a sudden he experiences cardiac arrest in the middle of the game. When somebody all of a sudden experiences this shift out of nowhere, this reminder of our mortality and our fate, we usually call that a tragedy. A hero we think of as a model of morality, someone that leaves a legacy of goodness to people. Like Martin Luther King, you could take those two ideas, tragedy and hero, and he seems to qualify. Gandhi, these are people that were assassinated and are remembered for being, good and noble mythic figures. All right, we're going to abandon that idea because Aristotle has a more human vision for what makes a tragic hero. This idea, by the way, is invented by the ancient Greeks. It's a 3,000-year-old idea, but it's an archetype that you see in movies, you see it in TV, you see it in books, and you see it in real life. The first thing is the concept of greatness, not goodness, but greatness. And greatness just means they reach a height in stature that other people don't. They become famous. In that bottom bullet point, think of a forest of trees, and the great tree is taller than the others. And that makes this figure a lightning rod. And the gods would target great figures, and because these great figures would suffer from a kind of hubris, would think that they're more of a god than a person, would recognize their stature and abuse it in some way. We're going to get to that in the second part. Well, this great figure, famous for something, some achievement in sports or some achievement in music or politics, whatever, but they're equally famous for experiencing a reversal or a downfall. And this is the important. These two things are, and you'll see on the third slide, the most important aspects of picking a tragic hero when you think about this, because you really, the best choices are people who are, as I mentioned earlier, equally famous for achieving some level of fame and for messing it all up. I think of O.J. Simpson. When you look at the first slide, here's a Hall of Fame football player, the first running back to run for 2,000 yards in a season on a Buffalo Bills team that has no passing game. Everybody schemes against him. He is a great and preeminent athlete, one of the best running backs ever to play. He had a post-sports life as well. He was a commentator. He was an actor. He was a pitchman for many, many, many sponsorships, Hertz Rent-A-Car. But he would, of course, become kind of notorious in that trial for Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman's murder. He was acquitted, but carries with him the stain of that trial, that slow Bronco chase. And when people think of O.J. Simpson, they tend to think of him more for that later and shameful chapter than they do for his Hall of Fame career. This is a tragic hero. They become more kind of defined by their downfall than their fame. There has to be a tragic flaw, what Aristotle called hamartia. And this is the most essential thing, is that the tragic figure is the agent in his or her own downfall. Now, hubris is the most obvious tragic flaw. I'm going to have you, when you pick your own, think of two. You picture the rock star moving up through the ranks, gaining in fame, and I'm thinking of more like from the classic rock model. And he's thinking, oh, heroin won't. Sure, I'll try that. That's not going to hurt me. And so this is a different take on drugs and alcohol and addiction than the idea that it's a disease that AA and NA would do. This is more the concept of a swollen ego, the idea that I'm going to conquer this. I'm not like those other people. And when the character crosses that threshold, the flaw consumes them. I mentioned here that greed and jealousy are flaws as well. And Othello, of course, is undone by this tragic jealousy and also this tragic insecurity. The idea that maybe Iago he can trust as a spokesman for Venetians. Um, this is not something that is going to be visible in many real life figures, but the tragic figure does have a moment of recognition. And we're going to look at that later on and how that surfaces in Oedipus. They eventually realize, oh, I get what I did now, but it's too late to fix. Here's the last slide, and this is the experience that the audience has. This is the reason we watch tragedy. In real life, there really are two extreme responses to these figures. One, indulging in their success, an almost hero worship, and second, indulging in their failure, Schadenfreude. This idea that like we enjoy other people's failure. I mean, both of those two extremes are unhealthy and not necessarily human qualities. They're almost like bigoted qualities. But when we experience it in a more creative way, in the way Aristotle envisions it, when we look at it and we step back and look at it in a human way, years after everything happened, we feel the hero's pathos, and we have this idea that it's a real shame. It shouldn't have turned out that way. And this is the only way, when you look at O.J. Simpson, you think it just makes no sense that he would have what he had and be so consumed by jealousy. And so we're reminded, I'm sorry, of these flaws are universal. And we fear this potential in ourselves. So when we look at the tragic hero from this distance, we somehow see like a human connection. We feel a sense of pity for the loathsome end that this person had, and the fear that this is a quality, this is a condition that can happen to any of us.